let my ops see the envy me. Passing it off like CP3. Shawty, she calling me MVP. I be on time, it's something you ain't never seen before. They call me the Dama, really want my whole team to score. Damn, yeah, too icy, yeah, too clean, yeah, my zone, yeah, 2-3, yeah, got shooters that hit from deep, bust like Giannis, yeah, too mean. Bright lights like we at the garden, on PD, don't even start it. Whole team walk in me to party. If I can't make the play, I'ma lob it. If you jump, that's right on your head. Had to put him to sleep, go to bed. I'm a star, drop 50 and left. From the logo, like I'm Steph. Put it up, knock him down every time. Going hard like my life on the line. Catch me on the course, I would've dime. Never losing, I put it on mine. Had to get on my shell, I've been laying low. They get real when it comes to the playoffs. You fight with me, no one's KO.
Our head coach of our Lobo football program, Bronco Mental.
The details themselves with the right preparation can separate you from mediocre competitors that don't do that. And so, yeah, the attention to detail, I think, drives the execution, or should I say brings the execution to life, especially in critical moments.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Ladies and gentlemen, from La Casa de los Lobos, the pit, here at the University of New Mexico, let's get ready to rumble!
Man, it starts raining and Xfinity internet just completely craps out on you. I'm sorry about that introduction. Let me hit you with the triple haze. Hey, hey! And then here it is.
First and goal. Clock winding down. That's Humphrey. It's touchdown, Montana State.
Well, Montana State comes into Albuquerque as 14-point favorites and somehow escapes 35-31. My name is Ryan Tamori. We will talk more about that. This is the Pit Press Live. That's definitely one of my worst intros ever. I'm sorry for that. I'll get to the usual suspects. Want to thank our sponsors, Hydro Bar, Affordable Service, Affordable Solar. Everything's affordable. Turquoise Desert Tap Room and Restaurant, and Dulce River Bakery and Coffee. Appreciate them. To the, let me fix this. There we go. To the panel, the usual suspects, as I always say. My business partner in this endeavor, who shouldn't advise me on any proofreading, even though it's my background. Mr. Eric Moulton. Eric, how you doing?
Hey, man, we all make mistakes. No, I'm doing good. Still trying to rebuttal from yesterday's loss, but it is what it is. It's one of those things that you kind of just flush and turn your focus to the new week. But yeah, definitely still struggling from yesterday.
And we go to the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. He's been a Lobo fan since 1970, and I will get to him shortly about his thoughts. His name's Mr. Ed Nunez. Ed, how you doing today?
24-hour hangover without the alcohol, just coming down now. But yeah, tough loss yesterday, and took a little while to get over it, man. It did, but I'm getting there.
I feel you, and I think the rest of Lobo Nation feels you there. To his son, and you can find him as a producer and play-by-play announcer for ProView Networks, and he joined me yesterday at the game as well as Ed. His name is Mr. Nick Nunez. Nick, how you doing?
Ryan, Dad, Eric, good to be with you guys tonight. It was a full day of football yesterday. Ryan, you were with us at Community Stadium. We had West Mesa and St. Pius. Pretty competitive, 2.5 quarters. Then we went over to University Stadium, and we're set to break that down right now. Tough loss for the Lobos. I'd like to analyze it and talk about it more with you guys. So ready to get into it.
I just want to do some house cleaning first. And my own mistakes. I tweeted out that UNM's colors were teal. I don't know what was going in my mind, and we misspelt Dawning. But I'm sticking with that with Twitter because I have to talk about this. And I don't know, Ed or Nick, if you saw it, but I'm sharing it anyway. Tim Brando of Fox Sports called the game yesterday and tweeted this out with our friend Frank Mercogliano. Tim Brando, after a loss at almost the buzzer at Frank Mercogliano, their legendary sports information man, could summon a smile with his 13-month-old grandson. He recommended our dining location, El Pinto, tonight, a legendary Tex-Mex location for our crew. That Wesley's a cutie pie. I have a son. I'm not going to go there with the offspring of the offspring. But fucking Tex-Mex? It's not Tex-Mex, it's New Mexican. I even looked it up. What is considered Tex-Mex? Fajitas, nachos, and any dish that uses beef, black beans, canned vegetables, wheat flour, or yellow cheese. Here's what it says on El Pinto's site. El Pinto Restaurant was voted best New Mexican restaurant in Albuquerque, New Mexico, according to the Best of the City annual survey conducted by Albuquerque, the magazine. Come see why we're the local flavor for authentic New Mexico cuisine. I'm a Polish-Hungarian mutt from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and that set me on fire because I love what we have to eat in this state. I don't know how all of you other feel, but I saw that and my head exploded. Anyway, to the game. Unless anybody else has a comment about Tim Brando calling El Pinto Tex-Mex in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But I will. I just see you shaking your head, Ed. All right.
Yeah.
I did walk by Tim Brando. I've always followed him on Twitter. It's cool, man. But he have the makeup caked on. But TV people do that. All right. To the game, and I'm going to pose this question first. Actually, I'll start here. Neff's Stone Cold Lock of the Week was Montana State. UNM under 54.5. 2 defensive touchdowns kind of ruined that. I will start here and we will wrap back around. Is this one of the worst losses in program history? I think so. And I will get to that later. Ed, I will start with you though. It was a weird game. And I failed to mention that they blew not one, but two 17-point leads. They were more disciplined, but I wanted your overall reaction to that.
They were. I think one of the things we mentioned was the penalties. The penalties, they only had 4 for 30, so those were down. They turned 2 defensive. They scored twice on defense. A fumble recovery and then a fumble, 2 fumble recoveries and return them for touchdowns. So I thought that was big. But I think we said it all week long. They had to win on first down, and they had to stop that running game. And I think Montana averaged 7.8. Well, they came in last year averaging 7.8 yards per rush. I think they averaged yesterday 8 yards per rush. The 93-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter, I think, kind of broke the back a little bit. But we were all there. When that windstorm came up, it was almost like a sign. The wind started blowing, and almost that's when things started kind of turning around. Let's also remember, too, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. The naked bootleg that Devin Dampier scored on, great formation. They used a offset eye, a kind of a wishbone formation with limited success, but the naked bootleg that they scored on, that was a good call, good formation. But I think one of the things that I read in the paper today from Rick Wright, he only ran, Devin Dampier only ran 3 times. They only threw the ball 6 times in the second half. And let's face it, again, these are all good players for UNM. There were some big drops by Luke Wysong. Cody Melford had
Caleb Bedford.
Medford, yeah, he had a pass on third down. If he catches that, I think the game's over. And he dropped it. He's got to make that catch. Nick Trujillo had a drop early in the first quarter. And I think nobody feels worse about it than those players. They put them in position to win. The call on the field goal, 4th and 7 into a stiff wind, Coach Mendenhall said they talked about it. But the distance, and the book says kick the field goal. The book says, conventional football says kick the field goal. Into a tough wind, they miss it. They miss another makeable field goal in the fourth quarter. I thought it was a winnable game. I really did. I was very, very disappointed that they didn't win because we said this about the schedule. They've got Arizona and Auburn and then Fresno State. When is a win going to come? We're not sure. It's going to be very tough next Saturday. But here's what I'm going to say. I think we saw some improvement. I think Sanders and Jacobs are good running backs. I thought Dampier played well. Wysong had 95 yards in receiving. He didn't make the catch. Again, they're going to judge him on that. I thought he played pretty well. Those are catches he's going to make. He's going to make those catches, I guarantee it, later down the season. So I thought they had a chance to win. Let's not forget, Montana State's a pretty good team. I thought New Mexico stymied them in the first half a little bit with the run game, and they really took off in the second half, and they just couldn't be stopped. And when New Mexico needed to get off the field, they couldn't get off the field. The defensive line was getting blown off the ball. No plays by the linebackers. Ellis and Noah Avenger made a lot of tackles from the safety position, which is telling you the defensive front 7 were having a hard time. So my thoughts there, you got to move on. It's a very tough loss, and mentally you got to get over it. I mentioned it's a hangover, and you've got Arizona to prepare for. There's not much time for any pity parties. You got to. And I think Coach Mendenhall will have them ready to play. Maybe they won't win, but I think they'll be prepared.
I'm going to go here. Stopping their run game, quotes, air quotes, is easier said on a podcast than the reality. Wow. All right. We're aware of that. Nick, you made a good point of this, and I'm a stickler for it. UNM was 1 of 8 on third down in the game. And in the second half, this might have been a result of it, totaled 98 yards of offense in the second half. Conservative play calling, which makes sense with a lead. But Devin Dampier, who looked fantastic, was a non-factor in the second half.
Yeah.
I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, my initial reaction after the game was, wow, he threw 8 times in the second half, and 2 of those were on the final drive. I don't even know if one of them counted because he crossed the line of scrimmage. He had 1 rush for 11 yards. And, again, this is the first game. And I've never played Division I football. I've never coached at the Division I football level. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback everything and say, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that. But looking back on it, I mean, Devin Dampier is your most dynamic offensive weapon. And for him to only have 6 meaningful throws, 1 rushing attempt for 11 yards, I think it speaks to how vanilla this offense was in the second half, and I get it. They had a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter, run the ball, kill the clock. But when you play conservatively like that and you play to lose, you're playing on your back heels. And we saw, a lot of times runs up the middle with Eli Sanders and Naquari Rogers. And, again, I'm not here to second guess the coaching staff. I believe in this coaching staff. We're lucky to have Coach Mendenhall and the rest of the coaching staff here. But I am frustrated when our best player on offense isn't given opportunities to make plays with his feet, extend the pocket, throw to receivers. Now, again, my dad talked about it. Luke Weissong, Caleb Medford, 2 big drops on third down late in the fourth quarter. Coach Mendenhall said in the press game conference, we didn't catch when we needed to. We didn't make plays on third down when we needed to. But the point that I'm making is I think for this offense going forward, you've got to strike that balance between using your best offensive weapon in Devin Dampier and also protecting him, because if he gets hurt and he's out, this is a completely different offense. But I believe in Coach Beck, the offensive coordinator, the coaching staff. They're going to find ways to use him to be creative so that this offense looks a little bit more dynamic. So that's my take.
I think it's truly not about how you start and how you finish it. And I know we're Monday morning quarterbacking. Rick had mentioned on our Morning Howl, our UNM football pregame show yesterday, or was it the PIP? Was it our show on Thursday, that he had said that this game, and we broke this game down. We broke this game down as if it was the Broncos and the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. I mean, it was unreal. I don't think, I love college football. I don't think I've ever talked about an FCS or FBS matchup like that. And I don't know if I ever will again. I think just because it's a new era with Bronco Mendenhall. We talked about discipline, and Sean Ryder made a point in the press box right before, right early in the game, especially with that fumble recovery with the 41-yard return by Christian Ellis. And they had not sniffed the quarterback net last year. It was right off the bat. It was very pleasant to see the quarterback, Tommy Millott, who fantastic second half, get hit and score. I'm going to nitpick here because they only scored 17 points offensively. I think I like to see defensive scores. The way they scored 2 defensive touchdowns, I thought at the second one, at the start of the second half, I thought they were going to win the game like 56-17. I thought they were going to blow them out of the water. It just had that feeling. When's the last time 2 teams scored twice on defense and lost the game in college or the NFL? I mean, I can't think about it, but it sure doesn't happen often. It just felt, man, like this pendulum swung. And I asked Will Weber, I said, do you think Bronco's going to get the ship righted? And Sean Ryder actually interrupted me. He's like, pump the brakes. It's one half of football. It's not the question I was asking, but we talked about how they needed to be disciplined all week, and the penalties were a bonus. 1 for 15 yards, I think, through the first half or 3 quarters, and they didn't turn the ball over really meaningfully. However, this is what stands out the most to me, is that the total offense netted by Montana State was 567 yards. They ran the ball for 362 yards and threw the ball for 205. No interceptions on 32 attempts by Tommy Millott. In the fourth quarter, they outgained UNM 202-41. It's a very weird fact because I think there was improvement yesterday, but to blow 2 17-point leads in the fashion that you did and give up 21 points in the fourth quarter, I hate to sound like the Temptations, but it's the same old song to me. And this schedule does not get any easier with Arizona, a bye week, at Auburn, and then Fresno. I think we are realistically looking down the tube of an 0-4 start. Eric, I will throw it to you and your thoughts, a deeper dive.
I'm more on the optimistic side of things. Just by first game of the season, I thought they played a really tough opponent. Montana State was coming in a 14-point favorite, really strong offensive line, a lot of history there, and they're deep. They have guys at every position, and Humphrey had himself a game, right? Humphrey finished with what 140 yards rushing the ball, and he was the backup. Their starting running back was injured. But you just hit on all those statistics, right? They ran for 362 rushing yards and 362 rushing
Oh, yeah,
yards.
362.
But yeah, 362. But they also ran 25 more plays than UNM did. So like I don't know if that really I don't think you can rely on the stats to tell the whole story here. I thought UNM's defense held up okay. And you mentioned it that they did get pressure on Malott. They forced some fumbles. I think the game really came down to it. The difference in the game really came down to a handful of plays where there were some breakdowns. There was some big runs, right? The 93-yarder by Adam Jones. There was another big run by Humphrey of 34 yards. Malott broke one for 20, and then McCullough also broke one for 20 on a reverse. So when you kind of narrow that down, that's 4 plays that they just got a bulk of their yards on. So I think the defense held up to their own. I think they just missed a few gaps. That one that really kind of opened the floodgates for them was that big 93-yarder in the fourth quarter, right? I think that safety, and I can't pronounce his name, but he slid a little bit too towards the middle. I don't know if he got his view blocked or whatnot, but that was he was kind of the last man of defense. But on the offensive side, I think they put themselves together a few good drives. The drive where he hit Bruckler for the touchdown, I thought that drive was really well orchestrated. Dampier was hitting on all cylinders. He was hitting guys in the chest. He was executing, getting the ball out on time, hitting receivers in stride. So this team is very capable when they're executing at a high level. But in Bronco's interview at the end of the game, he just mentioned that it just was not consistent enough, and the execution wasn't consistent enough. And when there's a game like that, and the drop passes, you can talk about that. This comes down to maybe 5 or 6 plays that, to me, was kind of the difference in the game. Other than that, you kind of remove those plays, the Lobos did well. Offensive line held up. They ran the ball well. Eli Sanders finished with 87 yards rushing. He showed some signs of burst. We obviously know what Devin Dambier can do, dual threat QB. So I'm still optimistic. Obviously, I don't like to see the game and how they lost, right? I'm a Lobo fan through and through, but it was demoralizing to watch that because I felt like they had it and then they just gave it away. So a few miscues here and there. Maybe the Lobos have a little bit of lack of depth too, that on the defensive side, stuff like that. So I think they still have some things to work through, but I'm still optimistic kind of heading through the rest of the season because they still got some dudes that can get them through some games, make some plays. I would keep throwing Wysong the ball. I would keep throwing Medford the ball too. Guys make mistakes. Guys make drops. But that tweet, or yeah, I think it was a tweet or Facebook post that Wysong's mother made earlier today with fans kind of reaching out and making death threats. There's no room for that in college sports. You're either a Lobo fan or you're not, and that should not be something that people should be talking about. These guys are kids, and it's a game. So that didn't really sit well with me, and I think Nick, you sent that to all of us. But overall, I thought I was optimistic. I was happy with how they played. They just didn't finish. These guys don't know how to win yet.
That's a valid point. We had we're gonna have Ben Wysong on, who's the uncle of Luke and Evan Wysong. And I thought, Luke, hey, that 53, again, there are positives. It wasn't a shellacking. I can't believe, I really, truly could not believe they were 14 point underdogs because Vegas cleaned up on the sharps and the bettors with that line moving up. So if that makes you feel better, I should have queued up the Scorpions' wind of change, because once the wind started spinning and it got windy, it completely changed. There was a Fox Sports camera that fell off the tower. Nobody got hurt. At least, it was crazy. They even tweeted about it. I mean, Montana State was brutal. On Georgia Tech was brutal on social media. So was Montana State, and rightfully so. I think it's kind of crazy that it's the second game of the entire college football season, and you have FCS over FBS already. As far as the tweets go, people in this day and age, and I'm not the righteous police. Trust me. You hear how I talk on here. I'm not perfect. The Twitter trolls, and for people for sending death threats, and Ben Wysong had tweeted me that they were people with made up names and what do you call it? Different username. I sound like an old man saying this, but and then a fake picture.
Burner accounts.
Yeah, burner accounts, which is what somebody called me, and it's a picture of me and my child with my name. Yeah, you really got me there. Good. Bunch of fucking pussies that do that. I've actually loved meeting Caleb Medford. My criticism is constructive criticism. I know how hard these guys have worked. I was really happy to see what Luke Wysong did yesterday. The kid's been hurt for a year. He's out there playing, and he played really damn well. 6 targets, 5 catches, 93 yards. I will take a lot of things well. When he dropped that pass and then Caleb Medford brought that up, I really thought that it was almost like Wes Welker in my mind because I'm the Giants fan. But I felt really bad for him. But they catch either of those, and they're that game's over. But the death threats, and I know my language there, it grinds my gears terribly with how that's done, because you wouldn't walk up to somebody's face and say that. And I know print journalism, I don't, I use a keyboard and I hear keyboard warriors, and I don't know, it just pisses me off. But anyway, the Devin Dampier fake, though, I thought was very cool. I caught everybody off guard. At first, when I thought it had started, it was a fumble Ruski, because I looked down and I looked up and there was nobody around him. And I wondered what your thoughts were.
Gosh, when you mentioned the fumble Ruski, I haven't seen that play in years. And I can't remember who ran that in one of the national championship game to success years ago.
I think Nebraska. Or
Yeah,
Oklahoma,
and God, that play stunned me, but it was very, very well executed. And I thought the same thing yesterday. They executed that play very well, surprised everyone. In fact, when it happened, I think I had to ask you and my son, whom I was sitting next to, like, what happened? And then when they replayed it on the television, it's delayed from Fox broadcast. Then I saw how well it was executed. Excellent call. It really was. And at that time there, seemed like New Mexico had some great momentum.
Nick, I'll get your thoughts on it. I thought it was a great play call.
It was. No, it caught us all by surprise. The defense, Devin Dampier was asked about it in the press game conference, and he was like, the defense just kind of forgot that I had the ball, forgot that I was a player on the field. But one thing that the Fox Sports 1 broadcasting team pointed out, he sold that fake really well. He hid the ball with his body. You see it right there as he turns his body, and then he just turned on the jets and was not touched. So it was well executed, well designed. And I'll just quickly echo the same sentiments that you and Eric did regarding, some of the tweets that came out on social media to Luke Wysong and to Caleb Medford. We're here to speak positively about UNM football. We may be upset that they lost, but we support these student athletes. There's absolutely no place for things like that. So just going forward, I hope everybody changes their tune and gets behind this team, because that's what they need right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think that's what they need. I'm going to go to Sean O'Toole here. Hard to jump on a guy like Wysong, who's one of the most likely all-conference players on the roster. That might be true. I mean, he's a speedster. Ed, the attendance was something that we talked heavily about, and it was announced at 17,314. It sure didn't look like that, and I watched some of the replay and saw the highlights of how Fox was using their cameras, and it looked like they didn't want to pan out. I didn't really get a good glance at the west side, but it seemed I know they count the season ticket holders, and I know why they do that because it's technically a seat. I used to cringe all the time about that at the paper at the Daily Lobo. They said, "Oh, 14,000 people were here, and there was literally nobody in the stands from start to finish." On games like these, I don't know if you can necessarily get a read. I applaud the Montana State fans. It looked like they had about 250 to maybe 400 fans here, and we had heard that they traveled well. That was incredibly awesome. So if you were the way the TV sit, the cameras sit when they're not falling off the roof of the tower, you would have gotten a glimpse of navy blue and gold. But the announced attendance was on par with what you said and what we had asked Dave Williams earlier in the week.
It was. I didn't even see the west side because my son and I came up, to the elevator, the press box, and so I didn't see the west side. I looked over across the east side, but you mentioned and sent us pictures of the east side. But 17,000, that's what Dave Williams had said, 15 to 17,000, announced 17,000. How many people were actually there? I guess that's my question. I didn't see, so I can't say. But to me, you know what? If you weren't there, that's your fault, man. You missed a great football game. It was a great game. New Mexico didn't come out on top, but it was an entertaining game. One that, like I said, I walked out of that stadium pretty upset. But I'll go back. It was entertaining. So it wasn't the outcome that people wanted, but the attendance was right along what Dave Williams, the athletic director, the interim athletic director, had said to us. So that's what it was. That's what it was. And hopefully they only have 4 more home games left. Hard to believe they only have 5 home games. That's not a lot. Hopefully they get more fans out the next time that they play. We'll see.
And the next game is home.
I watched
the next
on
game
TV.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I watched on TV. The west side was like 3/4 full for the most part, about halfway through the game. And then I think some of the north end zone, there was a good group of students there too. So, yeah, you guys didn't get a good look at the west side of the stadium. I did. It was conservatively like 3/4 full. So I thought it looked good, especially on TV. They kept panning around, but it looked a decent crowd showed up.
That's good. I mean, again, the east side did not. If you were on the southeast side at 2:00, 2:30 in the afternoon, granted, it's cooled down a little bit. That was not. There was nobody there, and I don't blame anybody. I wouldn't have wanted to sat there either. I was at the Pius West Mesa game earlier in the morning at Community Stadium. And the Pius people are on the east side with umbrellas, and you had the sun. I mean, it was to quote Rob Thomas from Santana Smooth, man, it's a hot one. It was, and Ed, it was a very good college football game. And for as much criticism that I've given, I think that it was good that UNM was on a standalone game. When you lose like that, it can backfire. And you see that on social media. We found out how much how much New Mexico paid Montana State, and it was $360,000 to come here and beat them. So, I mean, again, that's not on the level of App State beating Michigan or App State beating Texas A&M or any of the, small schools going into major Power 4, Power 5 football and beating them. Texas A&M paid, I think, I didn't look it up, I meant to do it, App State 2 years ago, $1.6 million to score like 14 points on them. I mean, it's crazy. And then the cringe midnight yell beforehand. Go ahead, Eric.
You have to remember too, or even just consider, they're in the FCS. They have smaller budgets. They have less scholarships. They don't have the money to travel as often as they do, or travel as far and stuff like that. So I think all that money is applied to covering hotel, lodging, food, flights, airline, or maybe they bust here. But I mean, that's pretty normal practice, right? It's not, I don't think it's unusual for a D1 school to pay, or an FBS school to pay an FCS to come travel. Now, if you want to compare apples to apples, like you just mentioned, the Michigan and App State thing, that's outrageous. But I think they're just all things considered.
Yeah, no. Again, UNM paid Montana State $360,000 to come here, and I pray to God they didn't bus here because that's a long drive. Yeah, and Greg Lujan, you're right. Yeah, UNM will make that money back on the next two games at U of A and Auburn. I asked yesterday, and I've been looking for an answer how much Arizona and Auburn are paying for each of those games. I would imagine Auburn is going to be between 1.5 and like $1.9 million. It might be almost $2 million to go there, which is very good for the athletic department. I'm going to gather Arizona is probably over $1 million or close to. So that's really good. But that's just what I saw CBS tweet out. And you know what? It's good. It's good. It is good publicity and good sponsor, or not good sponsorship. It's good publicity and good viewership. I think to see the number 4 ranked team in FCS, I've mentioned on here, I love the FCS tournament. I wish that's what the FBS had done. And again, I do like bowl games, but it's lost my train of thought there. I was reading a comment. Eric Markham. These young men are working hard on and off the field. To criticize is pretty shallow right now. The wins and fans will come. Don't expect it this year. Don't be critical either. Be better. The fans haven't come in. Jeff Simiota said it. There's been no reason to go to the football game. You have to give me a reason to go. And I felt that way. And I go covering them. I'm going to be honest. If I didn't have a free ticket or a press pass yesterday, I was not paying to go and sit at 2:00. I know I'm sounding like an old man complaining, but I would not have gone to that game and sat in the sun at 2:00 on an August Saturday. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't have done it at all. As much as I love football, but so it's 1.9 million to go to Auburn. So it was close to 2 million. I'm fully aware it's the start of a long journey, but with conference realignment, I think there's a real possibility that UNM, if they don't turn the ship with football, there is a real possibility, and I don't think UNM fan understands that the school can get left behind, and that they could end up playing in the Big Sky, because Montana State and Montana sell out these games, and you can't even get 30 to 40,000 people in a 40,000 seat stadium. It boggles my mind. UNM goes to Oklahoma in 2026, and that will be 1.6 million. I'm not a Lobo fan. I've mentioned that on here. I'm objective. I know I've got this stuff behind me. It's stuff I've collected. It's memorabilia I've collected through the year. Yeah, football is the moneymaker. I tell this story all the time. When I went to Boise last year, I was with a buddy of mine that I work with for the UNM and Boise State game. We got off the plane. We went to downtown Boise. We went to BSU, and he pointed at everything on campus, just not athletic facilities, but educational buildings. And he said, Chris Peterson paid for this all. I understand it's a basketball state, but 3 Fiesta Bowl wins trump the hell out of Sweet 16 appearances. And I always talk about the mediocrity in the state, in this town. And let's just get to a Sweet 16 and we'll throw a banner up. And I've always joked with the Major League reference, win the whole expletive thing. But I went off on a tangent there. I just feel that and it happens. Bronco Mendenhall is on a very high pedestal. They should not be losing to an FBS team. They clearly showed it yesterday and scored 2 defensive touchdowns and couldn't do it. So that's just how I feel. What else did I want to ask? Well, I'll come back to that. I think I already mentioned this. Neff Stone Cold Lock of the Day. Montana State at UNM, he said under 54.5, and it was well over 54.5. But for a while there, it looked like it wasn't going to do that. I'm going to bring back the question of the day, or that I had, and I'll leave Ed for this one. Lastly, is this one of the worst losses in program history? Nick, I'll start with you.
I don't know, Ryan. Anytime the Lobos lose, I'm pretty hurt. I'll be honest, because I'm a diehard fan. Is it one of the worst losses in program history? Hard to say. You know, my dad's been a Lobo fan since 1970. He's probably the best one to answer that question. Just thinking about some of the recent losses in the last 3 years. Wind the clocks back to 2022. Lobos have first half leads over UNLV on the road and Wyoming at home. They blow them. And then we're kind of out of the Mountain West race, and the rest of the season is history. You know, last year, trying to think about losses that come to mind, the loss to New Mexico State was tough. That was a game at home. We were competitive in the first half, and then a couple long touchdowns. And, you know, there you go. Starting off the season with a loss to a FCS opponent hasn't happened since 2011. You and I talked about it at the game when we lost to Sam Houston State in the Mike Loxley era. That obviously hurt. A lot of tough losses in UNM football history. This one stings for me because it was so deflating. As you mentioned when we started out this show, 2 17-point leads, one in the first half, one in the second half, in the fourth quarter. And then this one just inched away from us while we had opportunities to finish the game. So one of the worst losses in program history. Hard to say. Whether it is or not, it hurts for sure.
Eric, I'll throw it your way.
Worst losses? No, not when you weren't favored in the game. They were a 14-point underdog, and I think the expectations were way down towards rock bottom, right? No one knew what to expect, but I thought they showed out well. And one of the worst collapses maybe could be up there, but I don't think it's one of the worst losses. I think I'm still on the optimistic side. I think they showed some exciting flashes on both sides of the ball, some big plays. They obviously have the capability to keep doing that. It just, again, comes down to the execution and the consistency of the execution. And unfortunately, Montana State has how many seniors that Rick mentioned? They had like 30-some seniors. Originally, they just know how to execute at a higher level more consistently, have been there over and over again. They've played in national championship games. They just know how to win, and that's a tough team, regardless of FBF or FCS status. I'm glad they faced a school like that at the beginning of the year, right? I think it just kind of faced some adversity and faced some really skilled, big players that have been doing it a long time, right? I think with the new era of college football and having the transfer portal opportunities on the broadcast, when Tim Brando was mentioning it, was Mellott was offered some transfer opportunities to go play for an FBS school, and he chose to stay at Montana State. So that kind of says a lot about what that program is about and what that program means to those players that are a part of it. So I don't look at it as like losing to a lesser opponent. They just have less resources, in my opinion. But I think I'm still optimistic and definitely far from one of the worst losses in program history, in my opinion.
Ed, I'll go with you. I'll throw it over to you.
You know, Eric, that was really well said because everybody, all the action, we said it yesterday. In fact, I had UNM 34-31. I was close. It just was Montana State 35-31. So I was almost right there with the score. But everybody had built up Montana State, and rightfully so. Eric just laid out the reasons why. And Coach Mendenhall said in the paper the other day, they have systems they believe in. They recruit players to fit those systems. They've won games. They've won eight games plus for 5 years, 4 years in a row. They've got a good coach. They've got a good quarterback. They've got good running backs. So, but I think the disappointing thing, 17-0, I kept nudging my son. I said, hey, man, they look good. You know, it looks good here. But right now, New Mexico's, they're new players, new system, new coach. They're not ready to make that move yet. They had the game. They didn't seal it. They didn't put it away. And that's on them. They had a chance to put it away. Medford had a pass right in his hands, and there's some mistakes made, missed field goals, but I think the defense and Rick broke it down excellently on how they would have to play disciplined gap control football. They didn't. Coach Mendenhall said that in the paper today. They missed a gap here, a gap there, and I think he'll correct that. But I'm very optimistic about the rest of the season. Now, do I think they're going to win 5 or 6 games? Probably not. But I thought yesterday they came out and looked good in several different areas. But I got to say this too, though. I think that you've got a playmaker in Devin Dampier, and Coach Mendenhall obviously doesn't want to risk too much injury, but you're playing with one arm behind your back because that kid can make plays for you. I think we'll see what they do in the next coming weeks. But as far as one of the worst losses, I don't think so. I've watched them lose to the Aggies, and my son mentioned some of the losses they had in the Mountain West. I've seen them lose in the WAC back in the day to Arizona State and Arizona. Arizona State used to come in here with Danny White and Frank Kush as the head coach and destroyed New Mexico. So I've seen a lot of worse losses, and I'm not going to put that in this category. I'm still very optimistic on how the team will improve. But, Ryan, I think you make some good points about football in the Mountain West. New Mexico has to turn the corner. I agree there, and I'm very optimistic that they still will. There was a game that they had yesterday. They should have won it. They didn't. I think better days are ahead for UNM football. I really do.
An interesting stat that I saw yesterday.
Go ahead.
No, just an interesting stat that they pulled up on the broadcast yesterday, that Montana State averaged just like around or under 20 passing attempts all season last year, and this last game it was Malott had 32 attempts. So I think that he looked really good out of the pocket and on the run. I think the Lobos really kind of focused on keying or holding his running ability or limiting as much as they could. But I thought that was just interesting on how they have a new offensive coordinator, and his whole plan was to get more of a balanced attack. And that's what Montana State did and executed. So just kind of, I guess, regurgitating my point earlier with their game plan and being able to execute at a high level. But
I think Victor Flores from 406 MT Sports said that they were going to try to pass more this year, to try to open it up. And, again, I had kept looking at the stats at the video board throughout the game. And I thought they're probably going to run the ball. I mean, they're going to be able to get good chunk plays. And I thought, again, for 3 quarters, UNM did a really, really good job. I'm still blown away that you scored on defense twice and you lose the game. I mean, that's it blows my mind. I was going to mention, I'm going to go back to this as far as one of the worst losses in program history. I'm on the different side of the fence with you guys, and I know it's fresh in my mind, is because I think as the game went on, we realized, okay, they can probably beat these guys, and they probably should have, would have, could have. And I know it's not how you start and how you finish. And yes, it is the first game of the Bronco Mendenhall era. Bob Davies' first game, they blew the bricks off of Southern in 2012. But I think, given the context of the ever-changing world of college athletics, and it's not what it used to be, this one might sting if they are not able to recover. I did text Ben Weissong today. He had reached out to me. And I thought that because of the way the schedule goes, and he said they're going to recover. And I mean, if they shock the world by beating U of A, or, again, they're roughly 30-point underdogs to Arizona. And Arizona's got Noah Fafita, who's probably a first-round draft pick, and Tatoria, I can never pronounce his first name, McMillan. He's preseason All-American. He's 6'6". He's a fantastic wide receiver. He's probably a first-round draft pick next year. So this does not get any easier. Then it doesn't matter if it's Auburn, you're going to SEC country. I think in the context of timing, this is a really bad loss for this program. That's how I feel. I think it could be pretty bad. I'm going to go to Rick. Rick showed they have playmakers at multiple possessions, unaggressive coaching decisions in the last quarter doomed them. I'm going to go to Jimmy H here. Eric, you're going to be like me and laugh at all the so-called Lobo fans who claim to have been there all along when they start winning with Bronco. Eric Markham. Yes, Tim. Whoops. R. Thompson. I agree. The prevent zone D was sad to see. Should have stuck what was working. Anybody have any final thoughts? I roughly wanted to stay on for about 45 minutes to an hour to just recap this game. Here we go. Worst ever in UNM sports history is Cal State Fullerton in basketball in 1978. I was referring to UNM football history. I'm sure Nick, Eric, and I will say Harvard, but I know how bad Cal State Fullerton was. Ed has mentioned it many a time on this show.
Yeah, that was bad. It really was.
Nothing, no more to add. No, yeah. I was speaking in terms of football, but I mean, there's so many losses, but I just think that, where it is in the context of way everything, I say the worst loss in football for me was the Oregon loss. I'm familiar with that game. Made national news because of that game. Any final thoughts from any of you guys? Nick, I'll go to you.
Yeah, no, I share Eric's optimism. A couple stats that jumped out to me: 6 quarterback hurries, 3 quarterback sacks, 2 forced fumbles. We talked about the 2 defensive touchdowns that UNM had. I think Frank Marcagliano said it in the press room that we were in. UNM had 2 defensive touchdowns in 52 games combined. The penalties. I mean,
right? That's a huge. That's a glaring stat. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Nick. I meant to mention that on here, and I tweeted that out. That they had the fact that they had 2 defensive touchdowns to start the game and to start the second half, and then they only had 2 defensive touchdowns in the last 52 games. That's like 6 years. I'm sorry to ruin your thunder there, Nick.
No, you're good. And then I don't know what the penalty yardage is. I'm trying to look at the final game summary report, and I want to say they finished with 3 penalties for 20 yards. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but this looked like a more disciplined football team. They were the most penalized team in FBS football last year. So I'm optimistic. It's a tough schedule going ahead the next 3 games, but we're Lobo fans, and we're going to be behind this team for sure.
They had 4 for 30 penalty yards, but that's not 11.5 per game. That's fantastic. Another thing that was glaring to me was Montana State had 27 first downs as opposed to UNM's 19. Ed, do you have any final thoughts?
I think one of the things that we mentioned, 3 bye weeks, and we, Ryan, you and I asked Coach Mendenhall in Las Vegas if that makes a difference as far as implementing more of his program and getting to practice a little bit more. And he took a minute to answer that, and he said he thought it would. So, yeah, they did lose. I think the more they practice together and work together, they're going to be better. Arizona's going to be a tough game. So will Auburn. I still think you'll see improvement, especially those bye weeks are going to be important for him to get some more practice in, more repetitions. I still think you saw a better team yesterday, a more prepared team. We mentioned the penalties were much better. They executed better. I think they're a better team. They're a better coach team. It maybe didn't end up in a win yesterday, but I think, like I said, better days are ahead for UNM football. We just got to be patient. I'm in it for the long haul, and like I said, I've seen a lot of worse losses in my mind. That one doesn't even come close to some of the losses I've seen them have. Remember what you said, Ryan? This is a program that's won 19 games in 4 years. So it's hard for me to qualify any one of them as worse losses at this early point in the season. So that's just what I think.
They won 16 games in 2015 and 2016. From 2017 on, they've won 19 games. J-Rod 17. I'm going to be devil's advocate tonight very badly. Arizona has a miniature quarterback. We need to eat him up. Here's Noah Fafita's numbers from last year. Over 2,800 passing yards, 25 TDs, 6 interceptions. Tatoria McMillan. These are all American numbers. 90 receptions last year, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 15.6 yards a catch in what was a damn good Pac-12 last year. 2 defensive TDs by us equals 2 lost offensive possessions by us. But yeah, when you score 2 saying it, you shouldn't lose a game when you score 2 defensive touchdowns. I saw somebody said earlier that New Mexico schools are undefeated against Auburn in the past year. Maybe we can make it another. Yeah, that's the joke. Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say what I said on Saturday morning. I'm kind of skeptical of that 30-point dogs or 30-point spread. I don't know if we know a whole lot about Arizona yet, even though that you just kind of rattled off a bunch of stuff, but no one really knows a lot about UNM either, right? I think that's why they were a 14-point dog, and they had that team on the ropes, were up by 17. So if these guys figure out, which I'd imagine they would, there's going to be some evolving that's going to happen under Bronco. Guys are going to figure out where they should have been on the field, closing some of those gaps, learning more about the positions and the assignments. I think this last game was just a breakdown, some mental errors of not knowing where to be on the field, not knowing which gaps they should be covering. But I have to agree with what Rick was mentioning earlier. With these guys, got some really good players to build around, and they've got some good leaders. And I mean, you have a loss like that in any sport. To me, that's just going to make them more hungry. So I'm not going to say they're going to go out and beat Arizona, but I would look for them to be motivated, for them to be hungry, for them to work towards perfection, which is kind of what Bronco has kind of instilled in this program. So again, maybe I'm just a little overly optimistic, but I look for this team to keep improving week over week. And hopefully we get to see a little bit more of what Devin Dampier can do when he's out in the open.
Yeah, Dampier is quite, I think, a phenomenal talent. I thought he kind of missed a few throws there earlier. Other than that, I thought he's great. If he's rolling and this offense is rolling with the talent at wide receiver, the running backs, and the offensive line held up. I think there was only one sack. Again, I think they can be scary.
No holding penalties.
No holding penalties.
Yeah, these guys are still learning how to work within the offense too. I think you could see.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Eric.
No, I think that you're gonna want to get like Wysong and Medford the ball, because those guys are going to want to avenge those drops. So these Lobos are still hungry, man.
I think so too.
You were going to something else, Ryan?
Yeah, sorry, I had some technical difficulties on my end. Arizona is 21 in the coaches poll and 21 in the AP top 25. Eric Markham, thank you. Ed the Pro, Nick and Eric, great call. Wolf, wolf, wolf. Jimmy H, wolf, wolf, wolf. The wolf will survive. Wolves don't wolf, they howl. Never heard him wolf. Little dogs wolf. I'll say that. Hey, we're gonna have you. I mean, I was on one tonight. We're gonna have we'll come to you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. We will have guests from Tucson that cover University of Arizona. Ben Wysong will join us Tuesday night at 8:30 to talk about the game, give his thoughts, and then we'll preview again the game Saturday morning with the Morning Howl. It's our UNM football pregame show. Everybody, thanks for watching. We do appreciate our viewers. I do like you guys. I'm glad you're joined in on the conversation. Really, really appreciate it. No, Ryan stays being negative Nancy. Yes. Thank you, Brown Sugar. Wrong, Ryan, as usual. Again, never heard of Lobo Wolf. Everybody have a good rest of your Sunday night and have a good Monday. We'll talk to you Tuesday night.